So I'd like to give you all an opportunity, maybe to just tell us a little bit more about yourselves and what it is that you do. Maybe starting off with you, Andre.
Hi, my name is Andre. My entire career I've been working in construction, project management, property development on the client side. My career spans 25 years. 10 of them I spent working in Kenya.
Thanks so much for that, Jack.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jack Juguna is my name. So I wear 3 hats for Jubilee Insurance. One is physical security, then investigations for insurance fraud, and finally I also take care of cybersecurity. So happy to be here to share experiences with you.
Thank you so much for that, John. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is John Githiri. My pedigree is in mechanical engineering. However, my entire career spanning 10 years has been in construction project management. And I cut across various industries, hospitality, upmarket residential. I've done institutional projects as well, malls, retail, etc. Yeah, that's about it about me. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much for that, Liki.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liki Ndiazi Changilwa. I'm a security manager for Gem Forest, M Gallery Collection. And I'm also vice chair for security managers within Nairobi, for hotels, that is, Nairobi, Naivasha, and Machakos, under Kenya Association of Hotel Keepers. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And lastly, Karani.
Good afternoon. In addition to being the chair of the prestigious QS chapter in the AAK, I work with the Public Works, with the Department of Education, specifically in the TVETs division, where we design and help in the construction of TVETs and other tertiary education institutions. Thank you.
Great. So, Andre, I'd like us to have you start us off. Maybe you can share some examples of where strategic design prevented major security issues in the developments that you've happened to manage.
Well, luckily, I never faced major security issues in my career, but I can give you an example how thoughtful design helped us to avoid certain bottlenecks. I was involved in a mixed-use project here in Nairobi, which was mostly office, but it also had some food and beverage component that was open to the general public. And we had to make sure that visitor registration and access control will have enough capacity to allow for this constant flow of visitors who are not tenants. So we did introduce access control based on facial recognition system, which was much faster than traditional, like writing down your name in the big book. And then once, if you registered once, then every time you come into the building, unless you're blacklisted, it just gets your face and you walk in without touching, dialing, signing anything.
And that obviously makes it a great experience for the tenants and, of course, the people who come to see them.
Yeah, and most importantly for our food and beverage tenants who didn't work any restrictions on their guests.
I have a question for you. Do you have any idea where those books go after the books that you replaced? The registration books.
I hope that eventually they get recycled.
Yeah, I know in the era of data privacy, I think it's one of the biggest concerns because apparently many of those books are actually sold. And then that's where you start getting certain messages that are promising to give you a lot of money.
Yeah, we were commissioning our system right when this legislation about data security was introduced.
Yeah.
So we were one of the first adapters of the processes that they were introduced.
Fantastic. Jack, how are you doing?
Good.
My question to you is, how can corporate security teams work effectively with architects and contractors during the design build process?
Okay, I think as it was said earlier during the morning presentation, security should not be an afterthought. One of the painful realities about security is that today, if you are asked to quantify a return on investment on the security measures you've put in place, a good number of us will struggle to justify the investments that we've put in place. You only come to realize the true value of that security when you have an incident. Today, if you look around and ask the various people who have had incidences, be it terrorism, be it burglary, and so on and so forth, today they have a very good idea of what it means to have a return on, return on investment on security. So when you think of how we plan our buildings, how we do the construction, how we design buildings, unfortunately, in most of circumstances, you'll find that some things become an afterthought from a security perspective. So I think collaboration, regular consultations from the design stage becomes very, very important. And most importantly for me is a question around how do we do a risk assessment to identify the areas that we need to cover? And what does that translate to? Once you have done a risk assessment, what does that translate to? It will, and it has one or two phases. One of it is what you will do from a physical perspective, but also it has an additional issue, which is around what kind of insurance do you take for that building? And I can give a quick example. So today, most of you have what you call fire and allied perils cover. Have you ever asked yourself what allied means? Food for thought.
Actually, I have another question for you. Given that Jubilee recently moved into new premises in Upper Hill, maybe you can share some perspectives around what you did there in terms of correlating to what you've just said.
Okay, so as you've rightly said, yes, we moved from our old building in town, a building that was designed in the 1950s, a building that had quite a number of challenges from a physical security perspective. You can imagine in the 1930s, nobody thought about CCTV cameras, nobody thought about access controls, nobody thought about creating routes to have cables run for modern security architecture. So there were quite a number of challenges in there. And for us, we came to experience the real security challenges during the Gen Z demonstrations. A simple thing like a fire. We had a fire, for those who remember, we have a KFC on the ground floor. So we had a fire incident. After the looting was done, they set up the building, they put up a fire. That is the day we realized that the water reel that we had, one, it was not close enough to take care of the fire. Two, I think the closest was on second or third floor. So you can imagine, yes, we saw the fire. Yes, we tried to attend to the fire. It was in a basement. It took us almost 1 hour to try and figure it out, how to take care of that particular fire. It could have been catastrophic, but thank God we were able to manage it. So with those experiences, when you are designing the new headquarters in Upper Hill, this is the former Coca-Cola office, we had quite a number of collaborative meetings with the architecture, the main architectural team that was designing the building. We had collaborative meetings with the security vendor, whom I'm happy to report was RIANA. We had quite a bit of consultative engagements together. We had almost 5-6 different iterations on the security designs that we had. Some of the simple things that we don't think about, for example, is how do you evacuate about 600 people from that particular building when you have put biometric controls within the building, and let's say a fire alarm has gone? How do you make sure that these people safely are able to evacuate? So yes, the lessons are there, and I think Moses, one of the lessons that we got to learn is that, like Nairobi, there are quite a number of old buildings. Those buildings are not ready for disasters, and I think we learned our lesson, and we have made changes that we needed to do.
Fantastic for sharing that. I think both the pre-situation and obviously your current situation. John, how are you? Oh, sorry, I think we have a shortage of mics here. Just go ahead, yeah. Thank you.
I'm fine, thank you, Moses.
So you're coming from the construction perspective, and I'm thinking about standards and compliance frameworks. How do these play into how you design and shape secure spaces?
Okay, thank you, Moses. Overall, in the construction industry, we are governed by the recently published Building Code of 2024. Secondly, that document has call-outs to the various standards from KEBS. We have standards on installation of CCTV, installation of electric fence, etc. However, we are finding much more involvement or much more need for compliance to outside standards. There was a mention during this forum about the Data Protection Act. It has come to also impact things in the actual brick and mortar construction. For example, within the Data Protection Act, there's mention of data being held within reasonable amount of time. So in our experience, when we are doing factors such as storage of CCTV footage, what is a balance between how long you can keep a footage versus how much it's going to cost, because every terabyte of storage costs money. Keeping that in a rack room and air conditioning and all of that, keeping the server room running is a cost driver. So in terms of other aspects of regulation, I would say that insulation, so far we've not seen very strong regulation or very strong law enforcement or regulation around implementation of CCTV. In the codes that I mentioned, and my architect friend can comment, if at all we might not have the full scope of the current building code, is that they focused more in terms of construction safety. Installation of CCTV, for example, has to comply with certain electrical standards. Cables have to be conduited. CCTV pathways have to be tamper-proof. Junction boxes have to be tamper-proof. But in the real sense of operation of the CCTV, it's not very regulated this side of the market. I'd say most of implementation of electronic security is affected mostly by the aspirations of the client. For example, I've worked in the hospitality industry, and the aspiration of our client was to be EU approved or to be UN approved. And thereby they took measures to add some roller shutters, for example, so that in the event that there is a security scare or something like that, they'll drop the roller shutter and they'll be able to have a safe haven, to help them, take refuge. Again, such kind of aspirations, we've worked with homeowners as well, based on the kind of risks that they've assessed. So they'll also make provisions based on what they assess as risks, but really not driven by regulation. So regulation is there, mostly about electrical standards and about data protection, but not that regulation to say that you must have CCTV, you must have this kind of visitor management system or the like. So that's how we interact with regulation, and those are the considerations we take while implementing security installations.
Great. Thanks so much for that. Leaky, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah. So I've been to your hotel, by the way. I think last year we had an event there with RIANA. So really a wonderful hotel. And I'd really like to hear your perspective around smart technologies, things like facial recognition, visitor management systems. How have these transformed safety within the hospitality space?
All right. Thank you very much. As people have talked about, it's important when, first of all, let me say this, it's very important when you're building up or coming up with a facility like that, is to have these things be part of the building, so that they can be installed very well and according to the way they're supposed to be. Now, when it comes to this thing, like, let me use the example of camera recognition for number plate. It helps in going away from recording or using the books, the occurrence book, the popularly known as OB. We get away from that, and then you have everything stored. And then when it comes to investigations, for example, if someone or if an issue has taken place and you need to get to that, it's easy to log in and be able to get the plate of the vehicle that you're looking for. For example, during the 14 Riverside terror attack, there's a certain vehicle that was used for transportation and was also used to do survey in some other facilities. And in a facility that I was working at, since we had the LPR, that is the camera, the number plate recognition camera, we could be able to log in and see how many times this vehicle visited us. And that information we shared with the police for further investigations. Thank you.
Fantastic. And finally, Moses, from a surveying profession perspective, how is it evolving to incorporate risk and security concerns into cost planning and value engineering?
Thank you, Moses. In our line of work, mostly we incorporate the cost in the cost component of the works. So we interpret whatever that has been given to us by the architects and the engineers, and sometimes it's a challenge because a number of developers do not know to what extent that they need to incorporate different measures, because sometimes you're also looking at the issue of how easily you'll be able to automate the work or the building or the construction that you're doing vis-a-vis the returns that you're getting from there. So most of the times the developers are more focused on the return on investment as opposed to what is best working for them or from the advices that they get from the professionals. So it's sometimes a challenge that we usually face, but many times we go through different phases in terms of the cost discussions with the client, because we first of all give this estimate, and then we have another thorough discussion of what are we supposed to include or exclude depending on what the developer can afford. So it's usually a discussion that we go over and over until we refine it to a point where the developer and the consultants are okay with the provisions that we are making to the bare minimum that can be allowed.
But also ensuring that security is factored into the right standard.
Yes. Also including the right minimum most or the most basic to the utmost of the comfort of the consultants, the advice that they've given. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Andrea, I'd like to come back to you again. And in this instance, I'd like to ask you, how can property developers ensure that security is not an afterthought, but an integral part of project design and planning?
It has to be. It was already mentioned severally in this room that retrofitting is always more expensive and more problematic. But it's also retro designing is also very expensive. Because normally what happens, architect designs the building, concept design, detailed design, and only then they think, oh, let's call the security specialist and design CCTV and access control. It is too late. Bring all your consultants on board from the very beginning. And even when you and your architect discuss like the basic parameters of the building, it's good to have security specialists on board who will provide like basic design parameters for the security and safety systems. Then as the team of consultants move on to concept design, that specialist comes up with a concept design of the security and so on and so forth. So they don't have to work with something that's already kind of set in stone and difficult to change, or if that specialist insists on certain measures to take place, then the architect would need to do a lot of rework. So the key is to bring the specialist on board as soon as possible and make them all work hand in hand. Secondly, it's important to have kind of client-side involvement, and the client needs to be capable of kind of properly briefing the design team, because what normally happens, client says, oh, you know better, go and design something that would work. And this gives a lot of leeway for design professionals, and quite often people design systems that are not goal-oriented. They come to the client and they're like, oh, what's your budget? We'll design to your budget. Or like, how many cameras do you want per 100 square meters of your building? Or something like that. And also the problem is that we hardly have any specialized security design consultancy, which is not part of a bigger MEP consultancy and which is not affiliated to any solution providers. We hardly have this expertise here. So yeah, if it's part of MEP consultancy, they know about wiring, but they do not know about all other aspects of security. If it's affiliated with solution providers, they kind of bias towards designing as much stuff as possible so their sibling firm can sell it later on to the client. So what we're lacking is goal-oriented design. When we sit down and agree initially what are our requirements. Do we design Fort Knox, or we design something basic because that's an affordable housing project, for example? And then based on this main goal, we break it down into sub-tasks and then make sure whatever we design ticks the boxes.
And of course, HAS is constantly building, working on new projects and developments. Are you seeing a change of attitude and culture around the practice of making security integral to the projects?
Oh, definitely. In all our projects, when we sit down and conceptualize the project and come up with project briefing on the security design is an integral part of this very initial document.
So there's a general acceptance that this is high priority these days?
Yeah, so normally when you start a project, you first create a very basic document which is called like a project passport. It's essentially 1-2-page document where you put all the main criteria, and you include 2 or 3 lines about security and safety design. Then as you move on, you create a more detailed document that's called project execution plan, and then you have a dedicated kind of chapter on your approach to designing and then implementing security and safety systems.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. Jack, I'd like to come back to you. What are some of the best practices in integrating electronic security systems in commercial buildings, and what role do insurers like Jubilee play in risk assessment?
Okay, thanks for that question. I'll probably talk about 2 or 3 things. One is to have a layered approach to security. You've got your perimeter, you've got your CCTVs, you've got your access control. You could have your man guarding company and so on and so forth. All these parameters play different critical roles. From a physical entry perspective, once a person has entered in, have you created a digital footprint of this particular person? Where are they going, and so on and so forth. So that has to be thought through in terms of both pedestrians who are walking into the building, but also in terms of vehicles that come into a building. Now, we've all discussed around how we go collecting this information, how we're integrating systems, and so on and so forth. One thing that gets forgotten is cybersecurity around this information that you're collecting. So for example, today, how many of us are having a visitor management system? In that visitor management system, I know you are collecting personally identifiable information. Now, that personally identifiable information is protected by the Office of the Data Privacy Commissioner. How many of us have pen tested our systems to ensure that that information cannot be obtained? By a show of hands, anybody who has ever tested their visitor management system? We have 1. Anybody else? Yeah, 2.
Don't be shy.
Yeah. I mean, it is absolutely critical. I can tell you from experience, you will again only get to know the value of the information you are holding once a cyber threat actor has gotten hold of that information and is asking you to pay bitcoins. That is the day you will start figuring what paying a bitcoin means. So in as much as we are integrating, in as much as we are bringing these systems together, I think as part of the design, you will always need to have 1, cybersecurity experts, but also internet security. Because remember, all these integrations are enabled from a network perspective. So those individuals will need to sit within that room with the engineers and whoever else. Design, for example, where is all this data terminating? What kind of a data center are we going to create? Are we going to store this information in cloud? Is it going to sit on premise? How are we going to network our branches and so on and so forth? What kind of bandwidth are we going to have? Are we creating additional problems? Because the reality is not all data is protected the same. So for example, if you're having a data center within the building, it will have very different protection from how you secure normal offices. So for me, Moses, I think once you have the layered approach to it, you've secured the data that you're collecting. The last thing is about regular review of the security measures you've put in place. So for example, in our case in Jubilee, we had the initial design. people walked in, 600 people, then we realized we need to change one or two things. So I can tell you in the last couple of weeks, we've changed one or two things around biometric access controls that we had put in place, just to make sure that now you have proper control. As you know, initially we had thought of a particular way, but through regular review of what we had implemented, we've come to find alternatives where we can actually do better or improve on whatever we have, just to make sure that the building is much more secure.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is that it's not just an implementation process, but it can actually evolve and be refined and iterated further from that initial inception, right?
That's correct. So for example, let me give you a good example. So we have mother's rooms. So, you know, initially when you design, you have privacy in mind. So you're careful you not put CCTVs in there and so on and so forth. Then somebody comes and says, but my milk, I left it here, it has been exchanged. So what do? So now you have to bring access control. You have to bring a CCTV that monitors who goes in, so that if there is an incident, then I have a digital footprint of who went in there. I have a CCTV not within the room, but outside the room, so that I can figure out. And remember, within the building, for example, we have 600 staff, 20%, 10% will somehow access the room. So those are the considerations that, you know, initially we didn't have. We've got a crash, for example. Now, that crash, those are kids, they need to be monitored. There's a minder who will be there. Now, you have to think, do I need privacy here? Don't I need privacy? What is the security that I need to put in for the kids, and so on and so forth? So those are things that now start coming in later. And then lastly, you have what I would call, quote unquote, confidential offices. So do you want to have CCTV there or not? So some of them we have actually had to remove them, not because we don't want them, but it's because, again, you do not want anybody sitting in a CCTV control to know who is, you know, coming in, because some could be VIP, for example. And this goes along, you know, even where we have collaboration with, for example, hospitals. So you may have seen some hospitals have VIP clinics. Now, you may want a CCTV, but you may want to think twice whether you actually want a CCTV in a VIP clinic, just because of the nature of the clientele who visit that particular place.
I can tell you, John, I'm not looking at security in the same way anymore. There's so many variables and journeys of discovery that you seem to be indicating in the process. But thanks so much for sharing that. John, in your experience, what role should contractors and project managers play in embedding security and safety features from the early stages of construction?
Okay. We have a new project coming up somewhere, and it's interesting we're having this discussion because we are doing things that ordinarily would have just, you know, ignored and gone by. And taking an example of this hotel, which is almost similar to what we're doing there, is that, you know, we would have just done a traffic impact survey or traffic impact assessment. We tell Kura Kenya we are going to cause an intersection delay, and then it ends there. They improve the road and we go on. But there's one element of delay that we would have ignored, which would be the security down there. And the form of security would cause an additional delay, which would then lead to the client now making a financial decision. What is the best technology that would minimize the delay time there? So for this particular project, we have done an impact assessment, done some proposals to Kura, and then they've sent some follow-up questions about security. So we've had to align and beef up the proposal to include security interventions, because once you create a turnoff, especially for a place like this one, we have about 300 delegates here. It's potentially 150 vehicles here that we need to account for security. So we've seen increased interest and increased participation of security experts in working with traffic engineers to sort of try and resolve intersection delays, propose technology that greatly reduces, if it's in the form of trace detectors that, you know, break the seal of the vehicle, a few seconds, 8 seconds, you're done with the search. We've also seen a shift in terms of technology from, there's a time back we did bollards, and bollards, you know, used to take a bit of time to go up, the pneumatic ones or hydraulic ones, and now technology has now shifted to electromechanical tire shredders, etc. So that's the involvement of security professionals in the design stage.
Fantastic. Liki, I'd like to come to you now. How do you balance a guest-friendly experience with stringent security protocols in hospitality settings like Gem Forest Hotel?
So thank you for that question. In hospitality, it's, there's a lot of balancing between security and hospitality, because working in a hotel, because we are depending on the guests to come in and be able to promote us. And when it comes to putting up security measures, you just need to balance and make sure that they are accommodative. You put things in place that will not chase away the client. Now, in this balancing, it's all boils down to training of the people that you have. A proper training on how to handle people when they're coming in, and especially when you have things, the technology things in place. You need to put up things that will not delay or do too much delay of a client walking in. For example, if you do, let me use an example of my place. We have various layers of security search. One is vehicle search, the next one is personnel search. And by doing this, you just need to make sure that you synchronize this good communication between the guard out and the guard inside, so that when you're done with this, the guest is cleared very well into the premises. I know, like my colleague mentioned about the VIPs. And you see, when we have VIPs, there's a way that they want to be treated. And with the systems in place, there must be a good communication. Because I can say, when you look at the security now, and 10 years or 20 years ago, let me say 2007, we didn't have all this. But now things are changing. And in the next 20 years, things will be different in terms of technology and in terms of access points and all that. So it's a beautiful thing just to see how you can balance between security and hospitality. Thank you.
So I'm guessing the next phase will be AI will solve all the issues. Could that happen?
Let me say so, because I've been in this industry for 18 years. My first hotel that I opened in 2007, there were no bollards, there were no X-ray search, there were no even under-vehicle mirror search, there were no garrets. But because there's some rules or regulations have been put in place. For example, now there's what we call minimum standards that are being set, not only by the hotel management, also by the government, also by other potential clients. For example, in a hotel, if your hotel, you want to accommodate the Americans, there must be some standards you have to put in place. There must be some things must be in place. So when they come for security survey, they look at, do you have, they tick. What you don't have, they tell you, please kindly put this one in place, so they can be able to give you business. Now, government has also come in through Kenya, through Tourism Regulatory Authority. For you to get a certain star, you must have some things in place. When it comes to safe hotels, 60% of the survey, it's about security and safety. The other 40, it's for room divisions and all other things and food and all that, how beautiful the room looks like. So with these things being in place, they were never there before, now they're here. And in the next 20 years, things, technology will change. There'll be an introductory of new things and all that. Yes, so things will definitely
Who knows,
change.
AI might solve everything.
Yes.
Okay, Karani, how are you? What are the cost implications of late-stage security integrations in security projects, rather construction projects, and how can early-stage planning mitigate those risks?
Thank you, Moses. I can pick what my colleague just said. We can approach this in terms of the complexity that we have. And even the earlier speakers pointed out they are in archaic, there are different of course, machines that you're getting there. So I think in our processes, we tend to say or to gauge the apparatus that we're using or the system that you're using depending on the affordability that we have by a certain project. As much as the project needs a certain item, we might decide to phase it in a way that we can provide the infrastructure right now and be able to still install it at a later date. It's workable because at certain time there are things that you can't do without, and even if you are not affording them right now or at the moment of implementation or at a certain stage, you need to provide for the infrastructure so that you can be able to incorporate that item later, because the deficiency of it is detrimental to what you're providing as a service or the intended purpose of the construction. So that's one of the items that we use. Others would be the different levels of services that you're providing in the construction stage, or there are different stages that we usually look at the cost, because when you're starting, you need to gauge on what is the cost that you have at the moment versus what has been able to be designed. So there are processes that we usually look at as we go on and refine more and more until the even post the construction stage. So it's a long process which involves a constant communication with the developers and financials and consultants so that we can have everyone on board for that purpose.
I think one of the things I've heard you say is, in addition to what you do at the beginning, is also an element of almost future casting or future proofing.
Yes.
So that in the event or in the possibility we need to do more, that is also built into the process, right?
Yes, there are instances where many times we have encountered projects where we, at a certain point, we deem an item a necessity, but at the point that we're doing the implementation, we just make an informed decision. Do we really need this item right now, considering the budget and the provisions that we have at the moment? And the answer mostly is no. So we end up providing necessary infrastructure. For example, we do conduiting, there are a number of services that go together, like electrical works with, for example, structured cabling and the like. We provide that infrastructure in a way that even synchronization is done in a way that it will be easier to incorporate that service when that installation process comes in later. So we do a phased kind of implementation of such a service, so that when they bring in the item, it will be easier it will not be at the client or the financial will not be straining, but still the service will be met at a very peaceful or kind of not in a manner that is straining in a way to the project.
Okay, so the security itself can actually be a phased process.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, at this point, I'd like to open up the conversation to the audience, if time allows. If you have any questions, any clarifications, anything you'd like to give our panel, please raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you. Any questions, any comments? Any comment from the Butere people? Yes?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Is there a microphone somewhere? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all presenters for the wonderful presentation. I think I'm the biggest representative from Butere, and therefore from one Moses to another Moses, I think I may want to go first. Mine is a comment, maybe not a question, but a comment. I presented, and my concern was that the projects that we are involved in easily become very expensive if we have to figure out everything from the beginning. I like the angle Moses Karani is taking or facing security integration in projects. However, the clientele, I would even say 80% of our clientele are people who may not be interested or may not consider putting those strategies in place. So you may just want to comment generally on how you can introduce that topic to clients who do not, in fact, care about that aspect of project. Thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to make a contribution? Did I see a hand? Okay.
Mine's not directed to anyone, just food for thought. You raised a good point about the fact that in the country we don't have specific security consultants or people who are not selling a product. Do you think there is any sort of a space or capacity that we could have security passively designed in? I mean, when we talk about environment and heating and cooling, there's ways to passively design a building, but with security, a lot of the solutions that are on offer or being sold are active solutions. Do you think there is room in the future to have these considerations passively designed in and have less reliance on active solutions for security?
I believe we're experiencing the shift from passive to active. Passive, like tall perimeter walls and sturdy gate thing, gradually becoming thing of the past. And we now want our buildings to be like beautifully open to the surrounding community, and that's why there's more and more demand for active solutions.
Great, thanks for that. I think there's, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. I think mine is just an observation. We've all spoken about, new buildings and positioning, integrating solutions into the new buildings today for the future. But maybe we could start thinking about what's already existing and what we can do to integrate these solutions into what already exists as well, because 90% of the buildings today will not be brought down simply because they didn't have integrated solutions. So, as a community that's working towards integrated security and safety solutions in our buildings, maybe we could start considering how we can slowly start integrating some of the solutions into the already existing buildings and spaces.
Do any of you want to respond to her? Okay. I don't know if there's anyone else who... Oh, please, over here. Right there.
Thank you, Moses and panelists. I'm Engineer Aoko. I work with Kenya Airports Authority. Okay, this is a general question, but of course, because we are panelists, I want you, and you are coming from different fields. What is your thinking in terms of where we are, in terms of our built environment, and the issues regarding safety and security? I'm asking this because the representative from the Architectural Association of Kenya did mention, of course, a lot of these processes conventionally have been led by the architects as project managers. They've always said they are the project manager, yet they are not project managers for that reason. Because there is a whole new field of project managers, but because they take lead, they say they are project managers. I'm looking at this in the context of, we just talked about the affordable housing as one of the examples, all right? Walking around, I've seen a number of those projects. And already, you talked about the demolition that happened in the US almost over 100 years ago. And I see ourselves like that, we're just exactly there with our built environment. Of course, some strides have been made where we integrate other professionals at the early stages of our developments. That is why the Jubilee guy is saying that, and of course, it talks about project briefs. As professionals, sometimes we tend to shield our projects and not want to open it up to other professionals to interrogate until it's so late. But I believe that gradually we've been evolving as in sub-Saharan Africa and as a country, we've been evolving by bringing in more and more people into our projects at the early stages of the project. When we had the environmental issues, we had the Environmental Act of having environmentalists involved in projects. When now we are talking about safety issues, we are bringing in safety and security people involved in projects and all that and all that. We have sociologists, human behavior. One of the examples I usually give is when, for example, the inventor of the ATM, yeah? I don't know whether you've ever thought about the process around the ATM and the process that was thought through in terms of how we think as human beings. When you put your ATM to get your money, what comes first? Is it the money or the card? And have you ever thought about why? A sociologist was involved in terms of human behavior, in the sense that if you are to get your money first, you leave your card and go. So I think this, you may want to tell us, where are we in your assessment, in your experience? All of us are professionals here. Where are we? I know some strides have been made, but where do you think we are? And how much ground do we still have in terms of covering, based on what we see? There are good practices, but there are also still other things that probably we see around. And how do we get there? Thank you.
I don't know if the panelists would like to take or make a comment on that. Remark? Yes?
I believe we're still in the process of figuring out by experience what comes first, the money or the card.
Maybe I share the experience that we went through when we were designing our new headquarters. As you can imagine, this is a workspace, so there are various teams. So there were quite a bit of consultative meetings with the HR teams, for example. So HR would come and we'll have a discussion around seating spaces, lighting, fire escapes and stuff like that, just to make sure that, people are well taken care of. Health and safety has been part of the project from the beginning to the end. Internally, we do have a property team, which was working with the main contractors in terms of making sure that the designs that are coming through are more oriented towards the Jubilee culture. So the internal team guided the main contractors and his team around some of the nuances that are specific to us. Overall now, if you look at the process that you went through, and today you do a survey and figure out, are people happy with the building? I can tell you the satisfaction levels are very high, because the practicality of the building is quite high. The building is designed in a manner that is helping people do whatever they come to do on a day-to-day basis. So I don't think we can overemphasize the need for the engineers, the architect, whoever else, to bring the other people, because I can tell you for a fact there are comments that were made from HR. For example, if you come to the building, there is a middle staircase, and the concern was raised. So what will happen when ladies are walking up this staircase? You see, from a design perspective, you don't even think about it. For you, you want people to move from ground floor to third floor. But ladies came and said no. And we had to change one or two things around it. So I think consultation will be key. When you ask the question of where we are, I think it really depends from one entity, organization, and the value and the culture that you have. And also coming from experiences. So if you look at the old Jubilee headquarters, corners were many. You would get lost in that building. Time and attendance was an issue because you could come in from 4 different entry points. Now all this has changed. So all that, the lessons that we had from the old building, when we were designing the new building, we had a very good idea of what we want and what we do not want.
Thank you. I want to chip in on this matter. I think there is good intention and good effort made both ways. One by government. We've seen deployment of the CCTVs that were done by GOK through Safaricom. And we've also seen good intention from industry practitioners. We've seen implementation of security at malls. We've heard about the Tourism Regulatory Authority and the efforts that they have made in terms of compliance. So, and even at our own private homes, I know a good number of us, wherever we live in our apartments, is CCTV. If you live in your own premises, you might have a CCTV or even a nanny cam or camera within your premise. So I think the intention, in as far as intention is concerned, we are there, or we are almost there. We are there or thereabout. So I think what we need to do, in my opinion, to cross us over the line is legislation, and not in a way for compliance or beating people into compliance or to make a money-making scheme for someone in government or the like. 1 month ago, I was having a chat with Ranaf, and I was a bit distressed because we had a theft in one of our sites, and we had to turn to neighbors along that road, knocking doors and asking them, do you have CCTV footage that would help us triangulate the incidents? Because as it happens, where our site is, we don't have CCTV. There was a question, I think, we were preparing, anyway, I'll talk about that. So anyway, we spoke to different neighbors. Do you have CCTV? Do you have CCTV? So that we triangulate that incidents. And unfortunately, we could only find CCTV footage from, I think, 1 or 2. It was helpful in knowing the color of the car and the events, the timings, etc., but that was just about it. So what am I trying to say? In terms of regulation, could government perhaps through legislation suggest, enforce that when council is reviewing drawings, that we are building a wider network of security, just like the internet. Internet in its basic form, Moses, when I was learning computers in high school, we were told it's an interconnection of various networks. There's a local area network there and local area network elsewhere. Then all of these are interconnected, and we have a very wide network. So would this work, that when we take drawings to council, they look at your drawing and they suggest, if you were to do coverage, this perimeter, or this end of the building, and then your neighbor does that, and the entire frontage of the road in front of us has CCTV footage, you would be able to probably tell the sequence of activities or sequence of event. But for now, what we have the GOK camera somewhere along Waiyaki Way. The next one is in Parklands. The next one after that is in Ngara, but we can't tell the in-between of what happened. So I think there is something, if we welcome government, I know guys are a bit harsh on government right now, but I think there is that thing that government can do by way of legislation. And secondly, in the content of electronic surveillance, electronic security, that if the intention is to use these devices for security, because at times there's a camera there, but I don't think the resolution can tell that Ranaf is wearing a red tie, a maroon tie. It's probably going to be in the range of black or something like that. But would there be regulation that says that if you're going to do CCTV, that we do it in a certain way so that we see faces, and these faces, again, back to the wide area network story, that government would have a database that would sort of help us, because at times we end up with CCTV footage that does not help you, because where do you get Simon? I've seen Simon for the second time today. But if I have a photo of him and I've never seen him, the CCTV footage that I have, I'll still go back to the public. But why can't we, digitize some of these things? We have IDs, we have passports. So we digitize what government, or make use of what government has by way of information, and now link that to a wide area CCTV network that possibly could end up saving the country security situation.
I think already some people might be getting antsy in the room that what you're describing is Big Brother. The idea of the surveillance perhaps being an issue. It is, but trust me, I was distressed. A few weeks ago, I gave Ranaf a blurry image, and I told him, please try everything that you can. It's not the first time that we've had a site ransacked. We did another site in 2017 in Lavington, and we had a trailer full, I think 25 tons of steel being stolen. Wow. So it's a real issue. Yeah. Truck got in,
didn't leave. Someone brought in a truck, they offloaded pole pole, and it took off.
Wow.
So, Mutangari police station, they told us, we tuliona kitu, but, there is...
Liki, I feel like with your anti-terrorism background and other aspects, you probably want to share something as well.
Yes. CCTV installation or coverage is very important because when people enter a facility, the CCTV will be able to capture them and their movements. Now, when it comes to, let's say, for example, an issue has been reported, there's this individual that we are looking for who is suspicious and has entered your facility. Once you have the description of the personnel, it is easy to do a playback and be able to get that person and assist in arresting or making sure that a criminal offense or a terror activity do not take place. Most facilities, what they do, they install a CCTV and they put it there just for scaring people. They don't have a control room whereby someone is manning that facility. And then a security manager comes in the morning and says, I want to do a playback to see what happened throughout the night. I mean, that defeats the purpose of even having the CCTV there. So it needs to be monitored, get real-time information, and flag out issues that are not correct. And just to respond to my sister over there about the old buildings that have been there and the new or upcoming buildings. Yes, in hotel industry, that has come up, we've seen them, but there's those old facilities, some of them had to close down for a certain period, maybe an year or so that they can be able to see how they can integrate the new technology to fit them. Mark you, there are two hotels in this country. One was built in 1902, and the other one was built in 1904. Now you can imagine, did we have CCTV in then? No. Did we have anything? They were just, human surveillance and all that. We've seen some supermarkets used to have people sitting on a high-rise stool. Those were the CCTV in then. But now things are changing. Now, if you look at like M Gallery, because of the Accor being an Accor facility, Accor had to lay down, for you to use our name, you must have these standards, minimum standards. Whatever you put above that, it's up to you and depends with your pocket as well. So you'll find out that professionals were brought in to make sure that they sit down on the same table and work together as a team and deliver or put things the way they're supposed to be. And I remember when I joined in, it was still a construction. So I had to also understand, sit down with them and say, now we can put the CCTV here because of this. We can put this kind of an access control, which will help this. Because at the end of the day, when these people are out, I'm the end user. I should be, and the product should work very well for me. So the old buildings, if you want to continue being in business, then you need to rethink and be able to invest. Sometimes people say, security is very expensive. Yes, it's expensive. But if you don't invest in that, if you don't invest in security, you will not get clients. For example, let me use the example of the UN client. A UN client will not come to a facility whereby even, they will be worried of their guests when they sleep like this, wallet imeenda. So they will come and do a recommendation, and that's how security marketing comes in place as well. So it might be expensive right now because it will be a one-off thing. After that, we just now deal with servicing and after that and all that. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Vicky. I think we'll take this as the last remark. Charles is standing up, my fellow Arsenal supporter. So at this point, I think we'll take this as a final remark and bring the conversation to a close.
Thank you. I think I'll try to give my opinion on how far we have come. I think it has not been an easy thing in the construction industry. There are those people who are already known, like the normal professionals, the architect, the engineer, the QS, and probably it ends there. Then you get a plumber and electrician. These days you get real professionals in that you are able to have someone who has know-how of everything, including the most sophisticated terms that you need, the CCTV, as you're saying, the access control, and the like. So I think we've made some strides. The room is there for improvement, but we've made some strides. So I think it's about us giving that information out there, because we have the know-how, and encourage when you are setting up a project, or when you're starting a project, you implore the team to take in as many professionals as possible, so that all the facets will be catered for, including, or not even considering the cost implication. Other times you can just do a draw down of what the cost will be like if you go to this level, and also if you go to this level, so that the client can make that decision of the developer. So it's about us as professionals, and I would like to applaud RIANA. I think I have learned a lot in terms of other mechanisms that are involved in security. I had known just a few, probably internet and CCTV, for example. There are a number of things I've been able to see here, so it's a good thing that we know these things in the industry and we go and preach them out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Moses. So Andre, Jack, John, Leaky, Moses, thank you so much for your contributions. I think this has been a wonderful panel. I think we can all say we've taken away a lot of knowledge and insights, and